My dear chosen one, have you ever felt like someone you deeply loved slowly started becoming someone else? Not all at once. Not with loud drama, but with subtle shifts, like their soul was being pulled away from its center, like their eyes still saw you, but their heart no longer knew your name. If you're honest, you didn't just lose them. You felt like something took them. And now, even from a distance, something's trying to reach you. Something invisible, heavy, confusing, almost seductive. It's not just pain you're feeling, it's invasion. There's a reason your spirit hasn't been able to rest. You knew this wasn't just heartbreak. This wasn't just a love story gone wrong. Something spiritual was happening behind the scenes, and your soul was trying to warn you. What looked like a bond of light became a gateway, and what appeared to be a lover's obsession was actually a dark force seeking entrance. Not because it loved her, but because it wanted what you carry. That connection was never about romance. It was about infiltration. And now, that presence is closer than ever. If this is already resonating with your spirit, stay with me until the end, because this message will shift something deep inside you. I'm about to reveal why you've been under attack through the person you once trusted the most, and how this so-called love was actually a weapon. Drop a comment if you've ever felt like someone you loved was no longer fully themselves, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because what comes next will shatter the illusion and restore your clarity. You always knew there was something sacred about your connection. It was never just chemistry, or chance, or timing. It was deeper than that. A recognition beyond the mind. A soul-level remembrance that pulled you towards someone who felt like home, even before they knew how to hold your presence. But what you may not have known is that every divine connection carries a frequency. And frequency, my love, is detectable, not just by angels, but by those who feed on light they cannot generate. The moment your bond activated something higher, it also activated opposition. Before things fell apart, you felt it, didn't you? The strange changes, the growing distance, the inner confusion, not just in them, but in you. It was as if something was slipping, slowly, beneath the surface, like you were still touching them, but no longer reaching them. And even though they may have smiled the same or spoken the same words, your spirit knew. Someone else was in the room. Someone else had entered their field. And what's worse, it wasn't just about her. It was after you. You see, not every attack is loud. Some are seductive, strategic, hidden behind promises and emotions that feel real, but lead you to spiritual collapse. That force didn't want her for who she was. It wanted her because she carried your code, your frequency, your name written somewhere in her memory. The quickest way to poison a tree is not at the root, but through the water it drinks. And she was your source, wasn't she? At least for a time. But something corrupted the well. You began to feel tired, confused, agitated, but without reason. Your sleep shifted. Your thoughts grew heavier. And even when you tried to pray, something felt off. As if your channel was being distorted, rerouted, drained. What you didn't realize then was that a part of you was still open, vulnerable, through the soul tie that remained. Even in silence, even with no contact, the access was still there. And something not of this world, was using her energy as a bridge. But here's the part most people don't want to admit. You felt it coming. You saw the signs. You ignored the shifts, not because you were blind, but because you were loyal, because you remembered who she was before the shift. And part of her, you believed she'd come back, that the light would return to her eyes, that she'd wake up. But instead, she became a mirror of something foreign. And you couldn't save her, because it wasn't her anymore. What you were really up against wasn't betrayal. It was spiritual infiltration. It was an entity falling in love, not with her, but with what she accessed, with the gateway she carried to you. Because the truth is, when your energy is pure, powerful, and purposeful, it becomes a target. And the fastest way to break you is not through violence, but through love gone toxic, through connection turned parasitic, through the person who once said, "I see you," becoming the vessel that almost destroyed you. And the most painful part, you still loved her. You still hoped. You still carried the memory of her untouched self, the version of her before the distortion. But that hope became a hook. And every time you reached toward that hope, you were reaching into a battlefield. You were pulling yourself into a war zone disguised as reconciliation. And each return, each attempt to fix, only made you sicker. Not because of weakness, but because of what had taken her place. You were fighting something invisible, yet deeply familiar. Because it didn't come as a threat, it came as memory, as longing, as flashes of what once was. That's how the enemy works when he knows he can't destroy you directly. He sends confusion in the form of comfort. He sends decay in the form of intimacy. And before you know it, you're in love with a ghost. Not her soul, but the shell it used to inhabit. And what you don't see is that your soul is slowly leaking power, clarity, protection, all because the cord hasn't been cut. That's what most people don't talk about. Soul ties that start in light, but end in possession. Not every union that begins in purity is sustained in truth. And when one soul opens a door that the other won't close, darkness walks right in. It doesn't knock. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to, because it was invited. Through compromise, through hidden wounds, through secret fantasies of control or redemption. And when that door stayed open, it gave that being permission to watch you, to learn you, to hunt you. Not with fear, but with fascination. Because you weren't just loved, you were studied. Your habits, your heart, your faith, your silence, the way you forgive, the way you resist, the way you carry light without flaunting it. All of it became data in the mind of an energy that had one obsession: enter your space. And when it couldn't find a way through your own defenses, it targeted the only one who still had unrestricted access to your soul, the one you used to call mine. And it used her not because she was weak, but because she still wanted to be loved by you. The plan was never to destroy you instantly. That would be too obvious. The plan was to disarm you emotionally, to confuse your discernment, to soften your boundaries, to lure you into making the first compromise, and then the second, until you were no longer operating from truth, but from memory, until you started praying less, until you stopped trusting your intuition, until the version of you that once stood strong became a quieter, more doubtful echo. That's how spiritual sabotage works. It doesn't attack. It seduces. And that seduction often wears the face of someone you once would have died for. Someone whose smile made you believe again. Someone who, at their highest, mirrored the divine. But mirrors can shatter. And what you were left holding were shards, jagged, dangerous pieces that still reflected your love, but cut you every time you tried to hold them. That's what this connection became: beautiful, tragic, and quietly destructive. You kept reaching in and kept bleeding for it. But here's the deeper truth you've been avoiding. She stopped fighting for herself. That's when the shift truly happened. The entity didn't win because it was powerful. It won because she surrendered. Not to healing, not to growth, but to the illusion that there was more safety in staying possessed than in becoming free. And that choice had consequences, not just for her, but for you. Because as long as your love kept flowing toward her, the energy that had claimed her kept feeding from your light. And the longer you held on, the more you became the sacrifice, the offering, the unknowing channel. You were trying to rescue her, but you were slowly abandoning yourself. And that's when the divine intervened. That's when God began disrupting the connection in ways you didn't understand at the time. Ghosting, conflict, distance. Doors that once swung open suddenly slammed shut. Not to punish you, but to protect you. Because the longer you loved what she used to be, the more you risked becoming who you were never meant to be. That disruption. You didn't understand? It was divine intervention cloaked in disappointment. You thought you were being rejected, but in truth, you were being rescued from a future that would have consumed you, from a destiny that wasn't yours to carry. Because what you saw as loyalty, heaven saw as leakage. You were pouring your essence into a vessel that could no longer hold it, not because you weren't enough, but because she had chosen another alignment. And when someone chooses darkness, your love becomes their loophole, a door left open, a light left on, an invitation to keep siphoning without ever returning. This is where the spiritual war gets subtle. Not every battle is loud. Some are deeply personal. They unfold in bedrooms, in texts that never come, in dreams that leave you shaken. They happen in silence, when your soul cries out, but your mouth says nothing. When you smile in public, but unravel in private. And you don't even realize that the war isn't against a person. It's against what took over their space. You keep fighting for them, but you're really fighting against what they've allowed to grow inside them. And that fight will always drain you, because you're not meant to war in someone else's house. And yet, even with all that, you didn't hate her. You couldn't, because you remembered who she was. The softness, the connection, the moments that made you believe again. But that's the trick, isn't it? Memory can become a prison, a beautiful one, a sentimental one, but a prison nonetheless. And the version of her that lives in your memory is not the one you've been dealing with. You've been battling a new version, one who no longer chooses truth, one who's made peace with confusion. And you've been the casualty of that compromise. But today, something shifts. You're waking up from the spell. You're seeing it for what it is. Not just a broken relationship, but a spiritual setup. A carefully crafted interruption to your purpose. Because the enemy knew he couldn't destroy you head-on. So he tried to love you through her, to reach you through romance, to enter through trust. But once you see the scheme, it loses its grip. Once you stop calling it love, it stops having power. And that's when healing begins. Not when they change, but when you do. Healing doesn't always start with closure. Sometimes it starts with clarity. with finally naming the thing that's been silently killing you, with saying, "This isn't love, this is spiritual sabotage." And no, it doesn't make you heartless. It makes you aware, because you can forgive someone and still walk away. You can grieve what was and still release what is. You can honor the truth of what you felt, while refusing to be manipulated by what it's become. That's not weakness, that's sacred strength, and you're stepping into it now. You're starting to feel it already. Aren't you? That pull back to yourself, that sense of returning home, not to a person, not to a fantasy, but to your own soul, your own center, your clarity, your peace. The part of you that was buried under the weight of what-ifs and false hope is rising again. And it's not angry, it's not bitter, it's wiser, softer, clearer, and more devoted to truth than ever before. Because this pain didn't break you, it refined you. And now, you're ready for the next level. The next level won't require you to chase. It won't ask you to rescue anyone. It won't demand that you suffer for the sake of proving your love. No, the next level is about alignment, about peace, about partnerships that elevate, not drain, that see you, truly see you, without needing you to shrink. And in order to receive that, you have to let go of the counterfeit connection. You have to release the ghost, not with anger, but with reverence. Because what you release with grace never returns with chaos. And what leaves your life by truth always makes room for something divine. This is the moment when your soul stops negotiating, when you no longer confuse love with sacrifice, when you finally understand that not everyone who touches your heart is meant to stay in your life. Some were only meant to activate you, and then exit. Others were meant to test your discernment, not become your destiny. And this person, she was meant to awaken something in you, but she chose to align with what opposed that awakening. And the longer you waited for her to return, the longer you delayed your own rising. And here's what few people will say out loud. Just because you shared something real with someone doesn't mean the path will stay pure. People change. Energies shift. And when someone chooses not to heal, they become a portal for what's unhealed in you. That's why this hurts so deeply. Because it didn't just touch your heart. It touched your patterns, your wounds, your longing to be seen without having to prove yourself. But now you know, real love doesn't require you to abandon your intuition. It doesn't silence your truth. It doesn't weaken your light just to stay connected. You stayed longer than most would have, not because you were naive, but because you were faithful. Because your soul remembers promises even when people forget them. Because you believed in the redemption of the bond. And maybe there was a timeline where that healing could have happened, but that timeline no longer exists. It collapsed the moment she stopped choosing her higher self. And you were never meant to go down with her. You were meant to rise, even if it meant rising alone. There is a sacred kind of solitude that comes after you leave a soul tie that nearly destroyed you. It's not empty. It's holy. Because now, you're no longer fragmented. You're no longer leaking energy to someone who's been spiritually hijacked. You're no longer playing savior to a soul that doesn't want to be saved. And in that space of emptiness, you begin to hear something again. The voice of your own intuition. The rhythm of your own soul. The instructions of the divine. Now finally clear, without interference. And the divine has something to tell you. You were never abandoned. not for a second. Every time the pain tried to convince you that you were unloved, the divine was holding you closer. Every moment you thought your light was failing, it was actually being refined. You didn't lose yourself. You were being stripped of what never truly saw you. And now that you see clearly, now that you've reclaimed your spiritual authority, you can walk away, not with regret, but with reverence, not in bitterness, but in power. Because here's the truth. The enemy never truly wanted her. He wanted the gateway. He wanted to get to you through the one person you left your heart open to. And now that you've shut the gate, now that you've reclaimed your frequency, the war is over. That entity has lost its grip. Its access has been revoked. And all that remains now is for you to return to your path, to restore what was delayed, to move forward without guilt. Because you didn't fail. You survived. And surviving this kind of attack is proof of just how chosen, how covered, how purposeful you truly are. But now, you don't just survive. You lead. You teach. You embody. You stop begging for love and start radiating it. You stop chasing alignment and become the standard of it. You walk into rooms and shift atmospheres, not because of ego, but because you've paid the price for your clarity, because you've walked through betrayal, temptation, obsession, and chose truth anyway. That's what makes you powerful. That's what makes you untouchable. And no entity can ever possess what now belongs fully to God. And maybe now, looking back, you can finally see it. This wasn't a detour. This was training, sacred preparation, a divine refinement process that stripped you of illusion and gave you vision. Because until you saw the spiritual mechanics behind this kind of love, you wouldn't have known how to protect your own frequency. Until you felt the ache of almost being destroyed by someone you adored, you wouldn't have understood what it means to anchor your identity in something eternal. Not in a relationship, not in their return, but in your own knowing, in your sacred connection with the divine that cannot be mimicked, corrupted, or stolen. You've now crossed a threshold. There's no going back to who you were, and that's a good thing. You're no longer soft in the wrong ways. You're no longer open without discernment. You're no longer giving light to those who refuse to carry their own. Your love hasn't grown colder. It's grown wiser, sharper, more precise. And because of that, your future will look nothing like your past. The frequency you're now operating in won't attract confusion. It will expose it. It won't repeat old cycles. It will interrupt them the moment they try to begin. Let's be honest. This isn't just about her. It never was. She was the vessel, the access point. But the real lesson was about you, about how much of your power you gave away while calling it love, about how many of your boundaries you sacrificed in the name of compassion, about how long you ignored your own intuition because you wanted the story to end differently. And now you're free. Not because someone came back to apologize, but because you no longer need the apology to validate your growth. You've healed in silence. You've cried behind closed doors. You've fasted, prayed, journaled, and broken down more times than you can count. And through it all, you've rebuilt something inside you that no one can take anymore. Your peace is no longer dependent on anyone else's loyalty. Your clarity no longer shakes when someone disappears. You know now, what's real never leaves you confused, and what's divine never drags you through hell. That wisdom was paid for in full, with heartbreak. But now it belongs to you. It's yours to carry, yours to walk in. And now comes the restoration, not just of your heart, but of your mission. Because there are people waiting for what you carry, people who will hear your story and realize they're not crazy, people who will see your scars and find hope in their own healing. You didn't just survive for yourself. You survived so you could become a map, a mirror, a messenger. And the moment you stepped out of that toxic soul tie, the signal cleared. The downloads returned. Your gifts sharpened. You stopped being a hostage, and you became a vessel. There is no shame in having loved deeply, even when it ended in confusion, even when it nearly cost you your life, because that love taught you what to never accept again. It carved discernment into your bones. It baptized you in fire so that now, nothing shallow can hold you. Nothing fake can feed you, and nothing less than truth can stay connected to you. You're not the same. You're not broken. You're rebuilt, resurrected, risen from the ashes of illusion with a crown forged in wisdom and a soul anchored in truth. This is your rebirth, not into a harder version of yourself, but into a softer one, softer in spirit, not in boundaries, kinder in love, not in tolerance for chaos, stronger in truth, not in the need to prove anything. You're finally safe within yourself, not because of who stayed, but because of who you chose to stop chasing. You didn't just let her go. You released a version of you that no longer serves your evolution. And that, more than anything, is your liberation. You've come full circle now, from confusion to clarity, from being targeted to being untouchable, from loving with desperation to loving with discernment. And though this journey felt like it broke you at times, the truth is, it built you. You are no longer the version of yourself that tolerated being spiritually drained in the name of loyalty. You now know that love without alignment is a trap, that intimacy without truth is a trick, and that anyone who becomes a channel for your destruction was never sent to be your destiny, but your lesson. The ones who truly love you will never allow something dark to speak through them to get to you. They'll never become a weapon in the enemy's hand. And if they do, even once, you'll know it's time to step back. Not out of hate, but out of sacred protection. Because now, you are responsible for what you allow, for what you entertain, for what you excuse. Your boundaries are no longer built from fear of losing someone, but from the wisdom of not losing yourself again. And that shift changes everything. From this moment on, walk as if you have been rescued, because you have. Speak as if you have been set free, because you have. Love as if you have been refined by fire, not burned by it. You carry evidence now, proof that no demon, no deception, no distorted love can stop you from fulfilling your mission. Your essence is intact, your vision is sharp, and your spirit, though once shaken, is now firm, sovereign, and lucid. And the enemy knows this. That is why he fears your return. Not to her, but to yourself. So, if this message spoke to your soul, write in the comments, "I am light," to declare to the universe that the gate is closed, and reclaim your light. For the forces that once touched, they can no longer. If you also like this video, leave your like on the button below, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any new content. I want to thank everyone who supports us through Buy Me a Coffee. Your support helps us improve our videos every day and always offer the best content. If you want to support us, the link is in the first pinned comment. If you want to delve even deeper into the secrets that make you someone so special, be sure to check out the video indicated on the screen or our Secrets of the Chosen playlist. Each episode was created to guide you even deeper into your essence. Thank you for following me this far. Keep going, and may God bless you.